Well, hey everybody, I'm glad to be back on the blog this week, and I am so super excited to introduce Nicole Deese. Hi, Nicole.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing so good. Yes. Thanks
Good.
for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. I'm going to try not to fangirl too much because I said I just found you in your books last year, and I am in love with your writing, and I can't
Oh,
wait to read everything that you've written.
oh, thank
So
you.
it's amazing. So I want to turn it over to you and let you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and your family.
Yeah, so I'm Nicole Deese, and I am an author of, I think, 15. This is my 14th that just came out. I just turned in my 15th contemporary Christian romance. And I'm a wife of 18 years and a mom of three kids, two that came from my body and one that came from my heart.
Mm.
And we live in North Idaho, so very
Wow.
close to the border of Canada.
Wow. So is it cold there now?
Um, you know, Last week we had like 60s and sun, and then yesterday I went on a walk, and at the bottom of my hill, which is about 2 miles down, it started to snow.
Oh
So
my
like,
goodness.
it's April, this is
Yeah.
like our fourth version of winter that has just happened.
Wow.
So
Wow. Well, I'm in Virginia and I think it's from the 60s today, but it's going to be in the 80s the next couple of days.
wow.
So we're going to be getting summer fever, that's for sure.
Yeah, at the end of this month, I'm going on a retreat with my plotting group, and it's in Texas. And so they're already having like some 90-degree, days and stuff. So I'm gonna have to go shopping for a whole new wardrobe.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned you write contemporary romance.
Yes.
So what inspired you to write that genre?
Um, Honestly, I've always loved everything romance, and I've always been a big reader I read like the Christy Miller series when I was young, and I just think that there's something so beautiful about a love story. And when I thought about it later on, I used to kind of be embarrassed that I wrote. Or to talk about, oh, I write romance, or I write romance, and then one day I felt like the Lord was just like, that's what the Bible is.
Mhm.
It's this beautiful love story of God wooing us to ourselves. So I think that there is this innate um, passion in so many of us that look at just the beauty of love story, and
Mhm.
can look at the love story that was written for all of us, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, amen.
yeah,
We all want to be loved, right?
that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So are any of the stories you've written based on true events or personal history?
Yeah. Before I Called You Mine, it was my 2020 release with Bethany House. And that story is very closely related to our own international adoption story of our daughter, Lucy. She's from China, and we adopted her at about 6.5 years old. And so I adopted her with my husband, and we already had two boys at the house. But yeah, it's a story that follows kind of a similar trajectory of a young single woman who is on the path of international adoption, and she has a surprising meetup with kind of this other desire of her heart to meet an honorable, respectful, loving man. And she meets
Mhm.
him kind of at the same time, and there's a pretty intense conflict of what choice can she, which path can she walk down, because
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. So
So that story is one of the two of yours that I've read so far, and I absolutely loved that book. I'm a big
thank
adoption
you.
advocate. I love adoption. My one of my grandsons is adopted, and
Awesome.
so I loved that story. And when I got
Oh,
to the
thank you.
end of the story, I will say I was hoping a sequel might be coming. Is that
Yeah,
in the
there's
works at all?
no, there's
Oh,
not plans for a sequel, but I just got another email the other day that was like, can you at least give us some kind of like novelette,
yeah.
some
And
kind of a something that just shows this epilogue of them. And I thought,
yes.
okay, maybe I need to do that.
Yeah,
So
so I'm going to throw my vote in for that because I
okay.
would like to see a little bit of the hero and the heroine
together.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yes. So
know. I do love Joshua and Lauren so much.
yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
glad you do too.
Such a great story. Such a great story. So let's talk a bit about this new one, All That It Takes. This
Yeah,
just came out, what, April 5th?
April 5th.
Okay, so April 5th, and I haven't gotten to start reading that yet, but I'm going to very, very soon
Yay.
once I
Yeah.
finish up the book I'm reading now. So I'm super excited. So let's talk a little bit about this.
Okay.
What are you hoping for readers to take from this book?
This story really revolves around the title. It kind of gets deeper and deeper into many layers of this idea of all that it takes is one person being willing to step out, um, that that can change the trajectory of an entire life. That when we risk ourselves, or when we say yes to someone in need, whether it be a felt need or an emotional need or a spiritual need, whatever it is, um, that one yes really has the power, to change the trajectory of a whole life. And so my hope is that when my readers read this book, that they can be asking themselves, can I be that one? Can I be that one person that is willing to say yes to someone else, that really even has eyes to see, the someone else, in our world. And so that's really the heart behind the story. And both Miles and Val get an opportunity to really ask that question of themselves and
Wow.
act on
So based on that description alone, I already know I'm going to love it.
it.
That
I hope you do.
resonates in my heart so much for
Mm,
making a difference by how we live, what we say, what
yeah.
we do. We can truly make a difference. And even if we make a difference for one person,
Hmm.
we don't know what that one person might go on and do that could change thousands or even millions of lives.
Yep.
And we had a part in that. So,
Yep.
yeah, I love that. So,
Yeah.
what did God teach you personally through writing this story?
Oh, this story was a really tough book for me to write. And I've said that in a couple other interviews and conversations with my kind of little book, my book nook that I have on the inside. I really had to lean into the Lord about halfway through. I struggled to say, to just, what is this really about? Like, what's the bigger picture? And that really was the bigger picture, was that definition of, what if it really is about one person, not about, trying to um, have this movement, where you are reaching thousands and thousands. What if it's about the one, like you said? And so really was that moment between me and the Lord where I had to go, okay, like, even if this book is for one, is for one person, even if this message is for one person, like, it's worth writing. And so really just perseverance was a big lesson I learned, and just pressing in, asking for help, using my community, my writing community, to bounce ideas off of, and ask for help. And the Lord saw me through. But it was a tough few months there at the end, and I rewrote and I rewrote and I rewrote. And but I really do love Val and Miles, and I love their story. And it's a beautiful, picture of faithfulness, even when I see this published book, because there was a time where you just think, I don't know if it's ever going to get done.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
like, it does get done.
I know. My husband keeps asking me about this book I'm still working on. When are you going to get that thing finished? Come on, let's
I
get this
know.
thing out there. I'm
I
like,
know.
I'm still like revising and rewriting and,
Yeah,
making it better, and
that's right.
that's really exciting to see the story,
Hmm.
come from where it started to just seeing it get better and better. I
Yeah,
love that part of this journey. And I haven't
yeah,
been on it very long and I don't have a lot of
yeah,
experience, but I just love seeing it get better and better. It's exciting.
yeah.
So you're saying you had some difficulty. What was the hardest scene that you had to write without spoilers, obviously?
Oh, yeah, without spoilers. Um, there was several scenes that I rewrote multiple times. I don't think this will be a big spoiler because it is a romance. So there's usually some kind of a, falling out, breakup,
Hmm.
between hero and heroine. And this one I probably worked on the breakup scene. I probably rewrote it 4 or 5 times
Hmm.
before it really got to the point that it's at now, which I'm happy with, and feel like it's the right scene. But really having to get to the heart of the motivations of both of them, and really, really getting into the wounds that each of them have, and presenting it in a way. It's a very there's definitely an emotion involved, but they're really conflicted over kind of two different poles of what they feel are their callings, and those kind of come to a crux in this conflict, with this breakup scene. And so, yeah, that's probably my most difficult scene, because you really, as a romance reader, are trying to you know work around all of those emotions and tensions that we want in a romance, but then also dealing with these kind of two callings for both Val and Miles, and really the heart of the spiritual conflict and the emotional conflict that both of them have. So it took a lot of reworking, but
Hmm.
I think what's there is right at this point.
Yeah, I can't wait to read it and find out for myself what happened.
Yeah, yeah.
So, talk a little bit about the characters in the story and maybe which one
Okay.
was easiest to write and why, and which one was the most challenging.
Okay, so Miles is a pastor, and he is actually an outreach pastor. He's a has done a lot of short-term missions work, and kind of comes from a family of missionaries. And he was my easiest to write by so much. I feel like I really can relate to him. I can relate to some of his frustrations and his struggles, kind of within the church, but then also his passions for exploring, and kind of always taking on more than what he can really chew by himself. And then just his go, go, go nature. I really have a lot of that in me as well, where I'm having to go, okay, how do I sit and be still and ask the Lord for the next steps, instead of just, rushing out to whatever the next step is. I'm really, uh, I'm like him in the way of always wanting to anticipate the next thing. And that's very much who Miles is. Where Val was a lot more difficult. She is more like my husband. She's super steady. She's introverted, and has this beautiful mind and this very thoughtful mindfulness about life. And so I really had to kind of slow my approach, slow my thinking. And when I went to write her, I had to ask a lot of my friends who are a similar personality type, like, is this how you would think? Is this how you would, I gave them a lot of scenarios, like, okay, this is the scenario. Is this how you would interact in this scenario? And yeah. So Miles was by far the easiest. Val was a lot more difficult, and I had a lot of fine tuning to do in revisions with her. So
Yeah. So, do you have any favorite quotes from the book?
I actually just pulled my book out right before we got on, and because I saw that was one of your questions, I thought I better have one ready. Um, so this one just kind of goes back to the title that we just talked about. I had two that I had pulled, but um, this one fits what we were just discussing, and it says, all that it takes is one person being willing to step out in love for the betterment of another, to challenge the trajectory and change the trajectory of an entire life. All that it takes is one. So that's kind of
Hmm.
the title quote. And yeah,
Yeah. Do
I have
you want to
another one
read
if you
another
want to
one?
read it.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
So this one is from, this is actually Miles uh, speaking, but it's in Val's point of view. Um, I was wrong, Val. His head dipped low as his gaze collided with mine, and I suddenly couldn't imagine three more profound words for a man to speak. There was something so achingly beautiful about the words I was wrong, perhaps even more so than the words I love you. Because a man who could admit wrongdoing, a man who could break through the layers of his own pride, was a man who could love with true humility.
Mm, wow. That's good. That's
And
really good.
that really, yeah, as I was, my husband is very humble, and there's lots of times that he tells me he loves me. Um, but it's when we're having, more of our conversations together where he's like, hey, I was wrong about that thing. And it's like, oh, it always just
Hmm.
it gets me in such a different place.
Yeah.
And it helps inspire me to say the same thing. Hey, I was wrong about that. And
Hmm.
I think we encourage our children so much, even in parenting, to say, hey, if there was something, it's okay to change your mind. It's okay not to just be so bent on,
Hmm.
on what you first said because of pride. Like it's
Hmm.
so, there's something so beautiful about, that humility. And that's what Christ, really modeled for us in an example, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, those are part of the words in, like, if you go to marriage conferences and things like that, and teaching in the church, with my husband as a pastor, and
Yeah.
just saying, being able to say to people three simple things: I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
was wrong, will you forgive me?
Yeah.
And to be
So
able to
powerful.
say those things to, especially your spouse, your children,
Yep.
because I think for a lot of adults, sometimes it's hard to apologize to your kids.
Yeah.
But it's so needed.
Oh yeah.
They need to hear that and see that
Yep.
humility in us.
They do. Because how are they going to model it
Right,
themselves, in
right.
the world?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, in your process of writing and revising and all that, do you have a critique group that you work with, or a critique partner? Talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that and maybe the pros and cons if somebody out is watching this maybe is considering writing and getting a critique group.
Yeah. I've worked with Connie and Tammy Connellan Cassette, a biblical fiction author, and Tammy Gray, who is another contemporary Christian romance author, for I think the last 6 or 7, maybe 7 of my books. And we have a system now that we've kind of adapted to kind of work with our schedules and kind of with each of our preferences. But what we do now is we, as we're writing our first draft, we meet every Wednesday, and then in sequential order, we read the next chapter to each other over Zoom. And we have our Google Docs kind of in front of us. And so as I'm reading, let's say like chapter 3 of my first draft, Tammy and Connie are listening to me. They have the Word doc pulled up. They're listening to me read it, and then they are making notes. And then after I'm done reading, they will come back on, and we kind of all discuss. Well, here's some. We'll kind of go over their notes, but then if there's any content issues, they'll discuss those with me, and then yeah, so then I will get off that call. I do the same for them. We'll get off that call, and then I'll go through right then and revise based on their feedback. So
Wow.
that's what we've done for years. But I know people that don't want any. Like I have a really good friend, Amy Matayo. She doesn't want any critique during her process. Like it breaks up her own creativity. And so what she chooses to do is write her whole first draft,
Hmm.
then send it, to someone for critique. So I think that there's no wrong way. This is just what has worked for us. And I like instant feedback. I don't want to keep writing without kind of knowing, is this, I can get 1 degree, 10 degree, 50 degrees off really quick.
Hmm.
So I so much would rather prefer um, the feedback that's closer to kind of where I'm at in the draft. And so
Yeah.
for me, this has worked really super well. And I couldn't imagine not having it.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. So you get the feedback like right then and there. How long
Yeah.
is your call every Wednesday to for three of
It's
you to do
about
that?
Yeah, it is about 90 minutes. So it's, sometimes we might be maybe even eat closer to the 2 hour mark, but we really do try and stick to 90 minutes. That gives us about 20 minutes to read and about 10 minutes each, per feedback. And yeah, but like I said, sometimes we go a little bit longer if there's one person that's needing a little bit more, or like I just finished a book. And so my need, my push to kind of get those last chapters in was big, where Connie and Tammy were kind of in the beginning stages of a story. And so they were very gracious to spend extra time with me just to kind of figure out those last, what those last scenes should look like, and
Mm,
what was important to put in and that kind of stuff. So it
yeah.
was invaluable. It's
That,
absolutely invaluable to my
that's
writing
great.
career. Yeah.
That's great.
Hmm.
I'm still trying to figure all that out. I tried to turn in chapters while I was writing my second manuscript to the online ACFW critique group, but I found I had a really hard time finishing the story, like your other friend. Like
Yeah.
once it was, I don't know, it's like it used a different part of my brain or something,
Yeah.
like to
And it does, editing
critique.
and writing.
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
having to get back into the creative part of trying to write that draft, I had a real struggle
sure.
with that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like you said, you have to find what works for you. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think
And
that's really cool that you get that instant feedback right on the
yeah,
call. Yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's been really a huge help to my to my writing.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. So before we wrap up, I'd love to hear what's coming next. What can we look forward to from you?
Yeah, I haven't really talked about this much. I just turned in book one of a new three-book series
Mm,
for Bethany House, and they are standalone, but they do have a pretty consistent thread that's running through them all. And I don't really know what I'm allowed to say, what I'm not allowed to say,
mhm,
um, but there's a publishing house involved. I'll say that, and there's a lot of book loving, themes that run throughout, and there's a strong romance in each. This book I just turned in takes place in one of my favorite places up in the Olympic Peninsula of Washington State, and it's in Port Townsend. Um, and it's full of it's a very different book that I have never written anything like this before, but it's full of lots of intrigue and has a mystery thread that kind of runs
mm,
throughout the course of the book, and several different points of view, and a very strong romance. So,
mm.
which is a childhood romance. Um, so kind of second chance. So yeah, I'm very excited about it,
Yeah, that
and
sounds
looking
fun.
forward to talking about talking about more of it soon.
Yeah, so when will we hear, like, see a cover reveal and hear more about it?
Well, so I'm waiting on the cover. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm hoping that usually I get the cover right about now, and then I think I get to reveal it in June if I'm remembering correctly. I think it's right around June,
Okay.
and I'll probably reveal a title a little bit before that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be looking out for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for spending time with me today and allowing the viewers to get to know you a little bit and hear about this great new book. Everybody, get your copy. All that it takes. I just can't wait to read it, and I'll definitely be posting my reviews on the
Thank
sites
you.
out there. So I wish you the best in your endeavors, that you just keep on writing for the Lord and He just keeps on blessing you because you have an amazing talent.
Thank you very much, Dina. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye. Take care.
Bye.